Okay, so let's dive into something I bet you've experienced. You've put in the hours, right? Learning a language,
Oh, yeah. So much time.
listening to podcasts, maybe on your commute, while you're doing chores, maybe at the gym.
You feel like you're surrounding yourself with it. Hundreds of hours sometimes.
Exactly. And then, boom, the second a native speaker asks you just a simple question,
Your mind just goes completely blank.
totally blank. And that confidence you felt, listening by
It
yourself.
just evaporates, vanishes,
Right.
Yeah.
And you feel stuck, like you're on that intermediate plateau putting in the time.
but not seeing the results. It's incredibly frustrating.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this because, well, the truth is you might have been using podcasts all wrong.
Mm-hmm. And that feeling, that stuck feeling, it's so common. It's actually the number one reason people give up.
Wow. Number one,
Yeah. And it comes down to what we call the passive listening trap.
the passive listening trap. Okay, what is that exactly?
Well, it's when you have the language on in the background. You're hearing it, sure.
Right, you catch a word here and there.
Exactly. And you feel productive, like you're immersed. But here's the tough part. Passive listening, just by itself, it doesn't lead to fluency.
So all those hours?
They might not be doing what you think they're doing. It's a bit like watching workout videos from your couch and expecting to get fit.
Huh. Okay, I get that analogy. So why doesn't it work? What's the brain doing?
Well, your brain is a master of efficiency, right? It wants to save energy. So when it's listening passively, it kind of knows it doesn't have to engage deeply.
So it tunes out.
It tunes out the hard stuff, the new grammar, tricky vocabulary, those subtle sounds that are different from your native language. It just hears, well, noise mostly, not distinct language components.
Okay, so maybe it helps with rhythm, the general sound.
It can, yeah. Rhythm and melody, you might pick that up. But it doesn't build the crucial skills. Actually constructing sentences yourself, recalling words under pressure.
The things you need in a real conversation.
Exactly. Or even understanding native speed conversation fully. You end up with this false sense of familiarity,
False familiarity, meaning...
meaning you recognize the language, sounds familiar,
Yeah.
but you don't understand it deeply enough to actually use it.
Which leads to that blank moment.
Precisely. And it becomes this demotivating cycle. You put in time, see no real progress, especially if you're only listening to stuff you already mostly get.
So no new input.
Right. Or you listen to things that are way too hard and you get basically zero comprehension.
So you're stuck between too easy and too hard.
Kind of. And just letting it play isn't bridging that gap.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, right? What if there's like a simple change,
Mm-hmm.
a tweak,
Mm-hmm.
something that can turn all those potentially wasted hours into, well, the best practice you've ever had?
That would be the goal.
What if you could actually turn your podcast habit into a machine that generates fluency?
Okay, I'm listening. What's the secret?
Well, the solution is making that switch from being a passive listener to becoming an active learner.
Active, not passive. Makes sense.
It's not about listening more. It's really about listening deeper. It's a trick, honestly. So simple but powerful, it might feel like you found a cheat code.
Okay, you've got my attention. What is it?
We call it the active listening loop.
The active listening loop.
Yeah, it's a structured, sort of four-step method, and it forces your brain to connect with the language on every single level.
Every level. How so?
From the sounds to the meaning, all the way to actually speaking it yourself. This is how you smash through that plateau and start building real, usable fluency.
Okay, so it's a system.
Exactly. And our mission in this deep dive is to guide you through exactly how to implement this. So what are these 4 steps? How do they actually force your brain to, wake up and engage?
Right, let's break it down. The first step, and this is really crucial for just setting the stage, is what we call the gist listen.
The just listen,
You
right?
pick a short audio clip, and short is key here, say 1 to 5 minutes max.
Not a whole 30-minute episode.
Definitely not. Your goal on this first listen isn't, it's not to understand every single word. It's just to get the overall meaning, the main topic, the general vibe.
What's the gist?
Exactly. And you don't pause, don't rewind, just listen straight through.
Why, just straight through?
It primes your brain. It tells it, okay, pay attention. There's important information coming. Get ready. It helps you build a sort of mental framework for what's being discussed without getting bogged down in the tiny details right away.
Like looking at the cover of a book before you read chapter 1.
That's a perfect analogy. You get a general idea of what's inside. It lowers the pressure, too.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. Less anxiety if you're not expecting perfection first time around. Okay, so after that initial gist pass, what's step 2 in this loop?
Step 2 is the detail hunt.
The detail hunt. Okay, sounds more focused.
It is. This is where you really start digging in.
Yeah.
You listen to that same clip again, maybe multiple times. But this time, you're actively trying to catch specific words, phrases, grammatical structures that you didn't quite get or maybe just flew past you on the first listen.
Right, the fuzzy bits.
Exactly. And this is also where you'd use a transcript, if you have one. It's super helpful here.
So pausing, rewinding is okay now.
Absolutely. Pause, rewind, look up words you don't know. The goal here is to understand the audio as completely as possible, sentence by sentence, even word by word if needed.
Why is this step so important?
Because it forces your brain to actively bridge that gap between the sounds you're hearing and their actual meaning. You're consciously connecting the auditory input, the sounds, to the written form, the words on the page, and their definitions.
Building stronger connections.
You're building those strong neural pathways. It's no longer just noise or a familiar hum. It's specific, understandable language. I've had students tell me it's like suddenly a light bulb goes off.
Ah.
Words that were just blurs before suddenly pop into focus with meaning.
That sounds like a huge shift from just letting it wash over you passively. You're actively engaging with the why. Like, why didn't I get that?
Precisely. You're problem solving. Okay, so once you've hunted down those details, you feel like you pretty much grasp the content. What's phase 3?
What's the third part of the active listening loop?
The third step is the echo chamber.
Echo chamber, like repeating.
Exactly. This is where you start to produce the language yourself. You listen to a sentence, or even just a short phrase. Then you immediately pause the audio and try to mimic it. Exactly as you heard it.
Mimic it, like shadowing.
Precisely. We often call it shadowing. You focus on everything, the pronunciation, of course, but also the intonation, the rhythm, the pauses, even the speed of the native speaker.
So trying to sound just like them.
As close as you possibly can. And you do this repeatedly for each phrase or sentence chunk, over and over.
That sounds challenging. But I can see why it's critical.
It is absolutely critical because it connects your ear directly to your mouth. You're not just listening. You're physically training your vocal cords, your tongue, your mouth, the whole apparatus to make sounds and patterns that might be totally unfamiliar.
Moving beyond just recognizing the sounds to actually making them.
Yes. It's moving from passive recognition to active physical production. You're building the muscle memory you need for speaking.
That makes so much sense. It addresses that freeze-up problem, right? Because maybe people freeze because they haven't actually practiced the physical act of saying those words and sentences.
That's a huge piece of the puzzle, absolutely. They understand it, maybe, but the pathway to speaking it isn't built yet. Okay, so you've echoed, you've mimicked, you've got a feel for the sounds and the flow. What's the final step? How do you really seal in the learning?
Well, it's step 4.
The final step, I'd argue maybe the most powerful one for building true usable fluency, is the application play.
Application play. Okay, sounds like using it.
Exactly. Now, without looking at the transcript, without listening to the audio again, you try to use what you've just worked on.
How? What'd he do?
A few ways. You could try to summarize the main points of that short clip, but in your own words, in the target language.
Okay, summarizing.
Or maybe answer a few comprehension questions about the content, again, speaking or writing in the target language. But even better, try to create new sentences using the specific vocabulary or grammar structures you just focused on in the detail hunt and echo chamber steps.
Ah, so taking the pieces and building something new yourself.
Precisely. This forces your brain to move beyond simple recall, beyond mimicry, into active creation. You're not just recognizing or repeating, you're producing and applying the language spontaneously.
And that's where you really find out what's stuck.
Absolutely. It immediately reveals any lingering gaps in your understanding or, more importantly, in your ability to use the language flexibly and spontaneously. It's literally taking the information and making it yours.
Making it yours.
Yes.
Ready for a real conversation.
Ready for the real world.
That is fascinating. Because you're right, it's exactly that last step, the active application, that gets completely skipped when you're just passively listening on your commute.
Completely.
You might hear a word 100 times and recognize it in context, but can you pull it out of your brain and use it in a new sentence when you need it? That's the real test, isn't it?
That is the test of fluency.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? For years, maybe you've been passively consuming your target language, just kind of waiting for fluency to happen.
Hoping it just seeps in somehow.
Yeah. But as we've really unpacked today, fluency isn't something you just find or wait for. It's something you build actively.
Step by deliberate step.
It's time to stop being just a passive listener and start being an active participant in your own learning journey. That intermediate plateau, it isn't some insurmountable wall.
Not at all. It's just a hurdle.
It's just a hurdle. And you now have the technique, this active listening loop, to actually get over it.
It really is the key.
It's the one change, that shift from passive to active, that will unlock your listening, build your speaking confidence, and finally get you moving from stuck towards fluent.
And this raises a really interesting broader point. If the goal here isn't just to blast through hundreds of podcast episodes, but to completely master one short clip at a time,
Yeah.
what else in your life could benefit from that same approach, that deep, not wide philosophy?
That's a great question. Like focusing intensely on small pieces.
Exactly. Think about applying that kind of intense focus, that repetition, that active engagement to just a small piece of information or a single skill. How could that help you achieve mastery elsewhere?
Could be anything, really. Learning a musical instrument, maybe. The
That
tricky passage.
perfect example. Or grasping a really complex concept for work or study.
Right.
Or even improving a personal habit, breaking it down and focusing intensely on one small part.
It's about changing how you learn.
It really is. It's about literally rewiring your brain for more effective learning. Moving from just passively receiving information to actively creating, applying, and truly owning it.
So we have a challenge for you this week.
Let's hear it.
Find a short clip, seriously, just 1 to 5 minutes from a podcast or any audio in your target language. It may be something you've heard before or something totally new, doesn't matter.
Okay, find a short clip. Then what?
Then actually go through the 4 steps we talked about, the active listening loop. Do the gist listen.
Then the detail hunt, maybe with a transcript.
And then the echo chamber actually mimic the sounds.
And finally, crucially, the application play. Try to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Summarize it, answer questions, make your own sentences. Just try it. Feel that confidence start to build as words that were maybe just noise before start to pop out with clear meaning.
And feel what it's like to actually use them yourself, even in a small way.
Exactly. We're genuinely excited for you to discover what you can achieve when you switch from passive to active.